Okay, so one of my questions, so we had an introduction from Chrissy yesterday about like you are an American football player, and especially when we looked at your website, which I thought was really cool. So one of my questions was, how did you get the opportunity to be featured in the game that you're in?
Mm. So that's a great question. So I've actually been in two games, believe it or not. I have several Minecraft worlds. There's a series of three different Minecraft worlds called Coach Jen. And they include like touchdown battle and different things like that. So that was actually a group called Toya, which is an all female development crew out of Israel. They were doing Minecraft worlds and they wanted them to all be based on strong female protagonists because half of gamers are girls. And yet there are very few games where girls can be the hero of their own story. So the group from Toya heard about my football camps and they reached out and asked if I would be interested in having a series surrounding, those camps. And for me, that was, first of all, absolutely yes, because it's cool, but it's also so important for us to be able to have representation, right? Like that you could see that this was something that was not only okay, but it was actually pretty cool. Because having done girls' camps across the country, one of the biggest challenges has been getting girls to believe that they could play football, especially back then, because that was a few years ago. And so it was really interesting to me too, to hear that the same challenges we were having in football were those that they were having in gaming. So it was kind of a cool opportunity to like see the world of sports meet like esports, right? And how those things could work together to create more opportunities and representation. So from those games, I actually got introduced to some of the folks at Madden. And there's two guys. One was the producer, his name was Robin Cowie, and the director was Mike Young. And they do story mode in Madden. So in story mode, it's all characters, right? And you actually, even though you see it as a video game, you actually have to have actors do all of those things so that they can record them. And it's really weird. They put all these dots on your face so that the computer can pick up on them. And then it could make my face do things that I did not do when we were recording it. So they can make all kinds of crazy faces. They can spin your head around. It's really kind of bizarre, but they record all of it with the dots on your face. And then they have the motion dots all over you. If you've ever seen like the motion capture suits, which is what they call it mocap. So when I met those guys, we were talking about Toya and what they had done. And then they were asking me questions about football. And I actually was just teaching them some football things in the way that I teach them, because the game Madden struggles in two categories relative to some of the other games like FIFA and NBA 2K. And that's internationally and with women. And I said, well, a lot of that is the approachability of football, right? If you didn't get to play, it's already a really complex game. And we've not done a great job making American football, so not soccer, global. And so, I was talking to them about how they could make some of these things more approachable, and how I've taught football to people who had not played before. And I was teaching them zone coverages with slices of pizza, and teaching them how, you could find the soft spot in the zone, right? Because that'd be where the pizza breaks were. So if I have a cover 3, man, it's in between the two pizzas. We call them the seams, right? If it's cover 2, right, and you have 2 safeties, where do you think the soft spot is? Down the middle, right? And if you have cover 1, it would be like one big slice of pizza, meaning that the targets are then on the outsides. And I was literally taking through them with pizza. And then the guys kind of look at each other and they're like, are you thinking what I'm thinking? It was like one of those magic moments. And they had a character in story mode who's a reporter who, as they said, they're like, she's kind of the anti-reporter though. She knows way too much about football. So she kind of has a little bit of an attitude and pushes against people. And they're like, you could play her, couldn't you? And I was like, ooh, talk about football. I don't know. And they were like, yeah, see, that's her. And so I actually got cast as the reporter in story mode first. And so I'm in the game as that reporter. And they were all really excited. And then they hired me to consult for Madden. And it was interesting because the more people I got to know, the more they were like, we think it's really cool that you're in the game, but you're not playing yourself. And so they were kind of like, we did a cool thing, but we weren't as cool as we could have been as if we actually had you in there. And then they came back to me and said, we have an idea. Would you want to be the first female head coach in Madden in Superstar KO mode? So, and they already had all of, my face. So they just really had to repurpose the stuff that they had already captured and to make that happen. So, it was really kind of a fun process. And so if you go in Madden 20, and I think it's the same in 21, not only am I a reporter, but I'm also a coach.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and it was so much fun, like getting to film, and go through that motion capture process and, the acting part of it, because when I was y'all's age, I actually wasn't sure if I wanted to be an athlete or an actress. And so I tell people now I get to do some of both. And I'll tell you something, if you watch it, it's really funny. And you could pull up the clip. It's on my Instagram if you've ever gone on it. But one of the things that my players thought was really funny is either Team Shutdown is the shortest team on the planet, or they made me super tall because in the huddle, I'm the same height as all the guys.
Yeah. And I told them that you're 5'2". And so we were talking about that yesterday and even for me, I'm like, my gosh, and you playing football, American football with all of those guys. And I just remember vividly as I was listening to your story, like your biography or your autobiography. And when you're playing with all those guys and then putting into account that you're so small, like you're so strong physically, but you're tiny.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's amazing.
And yet a lot of people, when they meet me, they'll kind of say, you kind of look like that coach, but she's a lot bigger than you. And I laugh. I'm like, oh yeah, really? Is she? Okay. But it happens all the time because in people's minds, I'm really big. So they're always surprised when they see me and I'm smaller. But I don't think the video game helps, because what they do in that situation is they have different scenes, right? And they basically just, change out like the face. So it's not like I acted out those scenes and we had actual guys. Like that is just a matter of, they basically put my face on a different frame. And so what they didn't account for was the height. And so that's always something that's funny, because that probably contributes to why people think I'm really small, because no one would expect that my team of players would all be like, 5'2".
Right.
So my question was, why did you become a football player?
So I grew up in Vero Beach, Florida, and football is just the sport. It's like everybody goes and watches high school football. There's not a college team that's really close, and the NFL teams that are closest are all about 3 or 4 hours away. So it's funny because where Vero is, it's directly across the state of Florida from Tampa. Okay, so we're on the East Coast, Tampa's on the West Coast. We're 3 hours north of Miami. So Miami's down south. And then Jacksonville is I think 4 hours north. So it wasn't like there was a close team that everybody would go watch. So high school football really was like the big thing. And I remember watching it and looking out on the field, and I thought the guys looked like real life superheroes, right? They had like the pads and the helmets on, and the lights were so bright in the stadium. It just looked like the coolest place to be. And I just wanted to be one of them. And it was actually the first place in the world that somebody really said, like, oh, girls don't do that. And it never really made sense to me. But it wasn't like I was, I have to play and I'm going to change this. It just wasn't an opportunity. So when I got the opportunity to play, and believe it or not, I actually played rugby first because it was the closest I had ever seen to football. So when I went to college, I'd never seen football or rugby. It wasn't big in Florida. But when I went to Boston College up in the Northeast, it's much more popular. And when I saw rugby, I was like, this game is amazing. It's like soccer meets football, but they get to tackle. And so I played rugby for all 4 years at Boston College, did get recruited for the under 23 national team. And then I think they figured out how small I was. So I did not make the under 23 national team. And then after that, I went to playing football. But one of the reasons why I became as good as I did is, I think, because I played rugby first and I learned how to tackle with no pads and no helmet. And so was a rugby style tackler before they started realizing that football players should do that too.
Very interesting. And the interesting thing about rugby is that it's really all of the danger of football, but without any pads.
Yep, but the form is so different. When you're not taught that the helmet makes you invincible, you're a lot more conscious of where your head placement is. And when you tackle with no helmet, you're sure not going to put your face places it shouldn't go. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was such a good football player, is because once I added pads and a helmet, I wasn't going to change what I already knew worked, but I was going to, obviously have another layer of protection. And I teach lots of people how to tackle. I actually taught Tyreek Hill how to tackle a couple of weeks ago because, he's on offense and he doesn't do that. But I was teaching it at a camp, and I taught everybody with no pads and no helmet. And my joke to all the guys was that if I can do this and not mess up my makeup, then that my face is in all the right places. And I did. And I had makeup on, and it was the same at the end of the day because your head doesn't have to be in there.
Yeah, so it's sort of like a 2-in-1. So it's like how you said, like you're like raised the small person on the team. Would you say that drove you to perform better? And also, like, along your journey, what would you say are some of the things that kept you going?
So I think it makes you have to be competitive in everything you do when you're undersized, right? Like I always say, I wasn't going to outbig anybody. So, if you look at, let's use Shaq as an example, right? When he played basketball, he could just be big, right? And everybody had to work to try to get to his level or to try to compete with him. That was never going to happen with me, that I could just show up and be big, right? It's not possible. So that means every time I'm out there, right, whether it's, at practice or making a play or in a drill, I have to go hard or I'm automatically going to be at a disadvantage. And I used to tell people all the time, my teammates and even people I was competing against, that, if I don't give you my best, you should be insulted because it means you're not worth it. Right? Like, because I don't think you can handle my best. And I was notorious for, literally going hard all the time on all drills. And that was something that, some people loved about me and other people maybe not at times, right? Because it pushes them too. And what were the things that kept me going? It was tough, definitely. at times. And yet the thing that I always thought about is that they would call football the final frontier for women in sports. And so for me, that was like a challenge. If this is the final frontier, then when we can win here, can't we do anything? Right? Like if we can play this game and do it the right way, then aren't we pretty much, going to be able to not only change the sport, but to change culture through the sport? And so that was always like kind of what drove me, that and my teammates, the other women that I was playing with, the guys that I was coaching, it's really the people, to me, that makes things so special. It's who you're around. It's, I say the thing I miss most about playing is the locker room. And that's the people, right? That's the people that you get to see every day. It's your friends, you joke with, you work hard with, you go grab food after, right? Like, and I call them all my football family. So for me, the tough times, it was all of them that really motivated me to keep going and to go harder.
Is there something that annoyed you or still annoys you now being a female coach or for a female football player?
Probably lots of things. I think one of the really annoying ones that we all as like women in sports get is like, oh my gosh, the social media. Oh my gosh, the people who don't have to put their name to comments and can just say crazy stuff, because you hear it a lot. And people, I don't know how people have so much time to just be mean, right? But like, I just don't have that much spare time. And if I'm going to, it's not going to be to spend my extra time to be mean to somebody, right? But the one you always hear as like a football or like a female in sports is like, oh, go make me a sandwich. Or is she there to cook for the team? Or like, go back to the kitchen. Like, what are you even talking about? Right? Like, why would you say that? And I don't know of any woman who's done big things in sports who hasn't gotten that kind of, she doesn't belong, like, or she's just here as a publicity stunt. Because like when a woman is good at something that's traditionally male and she gets an opportunity, what do they say? Oh, it's a publicity stunt. Or she's just good, right? Like, but why is that the narrative? And so I think things like that are really hard. And yet, one of the reasons why I'll talk about them is because I know that like when I was y'all's age, we didn't have to deal with some of the online bullying and the people on social media. And I can't even imagine how hard that would have been on me when I was younger, because it's still hard to me now, right? And one of the things that that I tell people is be great and don't read the comments, right? Like just don't read them, because it's not going to help, right? And a lot of it's just the insecurity of somebody else who's looking at it, or it's their own jealousy. It really has nothing to do with you. And so, and that's not just sports, right? That's all of us. And I think one of the things that you'll find is that people who are doing big things and great things, they don't have time for that. They're not going to be the ones who are saying negative things to other people. So why listen to people who don't have your same level of aspiration?
Very true. Go ahead, Aya.
I once read that female soccer players get paid 10 times less than male soccer player. And I was like in shock, like 10 times less. It was so sad.
It is really sad, because you think of, we talk about equal pay for equal work, right? And they say that on the top end, it's 87 cents on the dollar that women make that men do. And then there is no place where the disparity between men and women in terms of pay gap is greater than in sports, right? I remember, and I don't know what the new numbers are for the WNBA because they did just renegotiate and it is better, but it used to be up until maybe as recently as 2 years ago, because sorry, I'm forgetting time because COVID, it feels like a bubble, right? Like it doesn't really feel like that could have been a whole year. But it used to be that the WNBA salary cap was $110,000 and the women had to be 6 years vested to get that 110. Now, the league minimum in the NBA is way above $110,000. So there's really no place in our society where the disparity in pay is greater than in sports. And that's something that a lot of us that are in sports really advocate to change because, why shouldn't girls who want to play sports have the opportunity to, really do well for themselves financially as well? Right. And that's why a lot of NBA players go overseas or WNBA players go overseas to play too, because they can make more money with overseas teams than they can in the States.
Just what AR and Jen was saying about like the like differentiation between like the salaries, it just reminded me of like a previous post where I think it was something like in comparison to like the LA Lakers team for the women in comparison to LeBron James's salary. I just remembered that when they were talking about it.
Yeah, it was probably their entire team wasn't even close to his salary. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And I think the other thing too, and I want to go back just a second to what you had mentioned about, women and they should be making sandwiches and things like that. Or the other big thing is, they're just filling a quota. That's the other one. Oh, well, they have to because they need to have that equity and, really it's, God forbid it actually be merit. But like you said, and which is a really good lesson for all of you, is there's always going to be those haters, those ignorant people that just because they couldn't do it or they aren't happy with themselves are going to say negative things. And, you just have to ignore it because they're always going to be there and you don't need to take your energy and put it on them. So for sure.
Surround yourself with people who celebrate your successes, right? Who really want to see you win or who will help you get there, right? Like, oh, you want to do that? Well, let's go practice together, right? Let's go pass the soccer ball or let's throw the football. Let's go do this together that, we're going to be better because we did it, as opposed to just finding things to be upset about or negative about, right? And that's kind of what I try to do. If and it's hard because when you do big things, people will be jealous, right? And that's the hard thing. And some of them are even people that you would have thought would be good friends. And what I've had to learn is that, you evolve in life and the people around you kind of have to evolve with you too. And that's okay, right? It's okay to make decisions that will help you set yourself up for success.
I just had another question. Why did you, was it a choice for you or did you want to play with the men?
So I had played with women for a long time, and the team, the Texas Revolution, actually asked me if I would go out with the guys. And it was one of those things where they really, at the time when they asked me, they really did want it for publicity. And they wanted me to go through one day of training camp with the guys. And I wasn't okay with that. I had done too much in football to let somebody use me as a publicity stunt. So I said, if you want to do anything with me and your football team, either I do everything that the guys do or I do nothing. And at that point, the head coach was impressed. He was not so happy up until that point because he wasn't happy about an idea of a publicity stunt. But once I said that, he got on board. And so it was an important lesson in, who you want to be in the world, right? Like I wasn't going to let them use me, but I did end up making it into a bigger opportunity than it would have if I would have just let them, have me come out there and run around and take some pictures. So it was definitely not something I set out to do. But once the situation was there, I really didn't see how I could, do it any other way.
Nora, are you there?
Oh, yes, I'm here. I wanted to ask a question, and maybe it's a bit out of context, but in the basketball, we had Kobe, who was very supportive of the women. Does the NFL have such like a no male figure like that supports the women?
That's a really good question. I don't think to the extent that Kobe did. However, I did a camp with Matt Leinart maybe two weekends ago. And Matt Leinart is a former NFL quarterback, and he wants to help with girls in football. So he kind of found out about it and has a daughter and was inspired by Kobe and what he did in basketball. And that's what made him want to start to get involved with the girls. So we are going to be working together, especially in California, to create opportunities for girls in football. And one of the things that I've found is that when those guys get around it, they really do like it, but a lot of them didn't know to get around it and to see the girls play. And I think you're just going to see more and more guys who do start to advocate. And, I had another guy the weekend before that in New Jersey when I was launching girls flag football out there. His name's Jonathan Casillas. And he played in the NFL, I think, for maybe 9 years. And he came out to, support the girls, and he brought his daughter. And his daughter was 9. And she wasn't gonna play originally because it was for high school girls. But one of the things I had done is invited some of the girls that I'd worked with before who were, get this, 9 years old, although I didn't know his daughter was going to be 9 at the time, to come out and see that there was going to be a future for them, because before that, it wasn't possible for them to play high school flag football. And for the girls who were getting the opportunity to play, to see some of the girls that they were then becoming mentors to. So what happened is I took his daughter and I introduced her to those girls, and then she wanted to play. And so then he got to see his daughter play, and he was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So sometimes it really just takes getting the opportunity to see what something can be like in order to change your mindset, because obviously it was Kobe's relationship with Gigi that really made him want to move that needle for the girls in basketball. And I think that's what we need to see for girls in football as well.
Haven't you noticed, for example, let's say in my country, Jordan, NFL is like something that you never see. You can never see, like, it's just like something you play with your dad at the park. You can never see some training camps or anything related to NFL. So but on the other hand, like basketball and football, they're like way into the sport, like in Jordan. Why especially NFL? I guess like it hasn't had that much fame such as basketball and football. And like, for example, us as I've got interested into NFL like 3 months ago, something like that. And then before all of that, all you know about NFL, just Tony Robbins. That's all you know about NFL. So why does the NFL doesn't have that much, spot on? Is it because the teams are not like, it's always the Tony Robbins teams that wins, rarely another Tony not a Tony Robbins team win? So why is
Tom Brady? Tom Brady?
Tom Brady.
I was like, Tony Robbins, is he in football too?
I know. I was like, wait, a motivational speaker. He's everywhere.
Tom
you're
Brady.
fine. So that was all you'd heard over there is Tom Brady?
Yeah, I mean, in Jordan, like I'm a person that plays so many sports, but like NFL was never. I just played with my dad at the park. I never just. I've never seen any camp in Jordan for NFL. Not even for men. Not only for women. Not even for men. It's not like sport that is not available in Jordan.
It's interesting. Well, it makes me want to change it, number one. But I think that is one of the challenges, is that it has been a very American sport, and it's really an expensive sport to adopt because of all of the equipment that's required. I know I went over to Australia, and I coached the Australian women's national team. And the first time I went over to Australia, I get a call like the day before I'm leaving. And my friend was like, hey, can you just pop to the store and grab us some down and distance markers? We can't get them here. And I was like, where does one even buy down and distance markers? Like, it's not like they grow on trees here, but people think that because it's American football, it must be everywhere, right? Like you could just get it at the street corner. But they couldn't get the equipment in Australia. So I ended up finding it. And if you don't know what down and distance markers are, they're the big orange pillars that you move down the football field as you gain. So they're giant. So I'm going through the airport with like these giant boxes to be able to get them to Australia, but they couldn't get the resources, even though they were playing. And even the equipment, right? Like pads and helmets. So, in practice jerseys are really loose. They're really big. Whereas you see the game jerseys are really fitted. So I had worked with the Australian women's team, and until we were in Canada and they had to try on their fitted jerseys, I didn't realize that their pads did not fit them. They were ginormous because most of the women who decided they wanted to play had just gotten hand-me-downs from guys that they knew who played. So when I say that these pads really didn't fit, I mean, they were giant. Thankfully, we could get them more pads in Canada because it's, there's a lot more there. But I think the fact that the equipment is hard to get and that it's very expensive has made the sport less global than some of the other sports. And I think what you're going to see is that there will be a lot more opportunities in flag football because flag is so much less expensive. You can go out and just play with a football like you could a pickup basketball game or a pickup soccer game. Whereas, American football with all that equipment, you really can't do. And I think that that's one of the biggest challenges internationally is the expense and the complexity. Because even in Australia, when we went there, most of their coaches didn't have access to great coaching. They were trying to teach themselves off of like YouTube. And that was part of the reason why me and some of the guys that I knew went over there to, help grow the game and to help even coach the coaches. So it's a lot of knowledge and expense, I think. And I'm going to tell you that everyone on here, you're going to have people who tell you things that aren't right. And it's up to you what you do about them, right? Like, and they have their opinions and you have your life, and you're not living your life for their opinion. And so really surround yourself by people who don't that aren't as confined by those stereotypes, right? Like on capability or humanity. I mean, I have, from being in football, I say my football family is the most beautifully diverse family you could ever imagine, right? It's women and men who we've played together, we've played against each other, we've coached together, been coached by them, they've coached me, and we are every make, model, shape, size, creed, color, sexual orientation, socioeconomic background, you know, that's what we are. And that's what's amazing in my life, right? It's given me this rich tapestry of people who I love, and we got to know each other through a shared love of a game, and one where you want the very best people out on the field with you. If you can ball, I want you, right? And then I get the opportunity to even know you better, right? Like, are we going over to each other's houses and I get to try food that I, maybe wouldn't have tried before? And, or do I get to learn about a holiday that I wouldn't have known of otherwise? And to me, those are really the beautiful moments in life. And it's sad that some people have never had the opportunity to get better in terms of wanting to know and understand other people. That's the best that I can say. And unfortunately, or, whatever it is, it's their loss that that's all they see people as capable of. It's their loss because they're missing out on some really cool folks.
Maybe most of you know, I played basketball, football, soccer, which is soccer, and I played taekwondo. So, and I've always hated to have a female coach, just because they used to be, too soft with you. Like, they were like, whatever you do, they just clap for you and then you're doing great. Until I had a basketball coach. Her name was Coach Vivian. And she changed the whole perspective. Actually, because of her, I've got to learn basketball the way I play. So maybe probably just because men are usually tough on you, like they tell you you're doing wrong, you're doing this wrong and this wrong. And many female coaches, they were just like, you're doing wrong and you just want them to learn you. But they just say, oh, well, no, you as a girl, what you're doing is perfect for now. Mm-hmm. As a girl, that's enough. And so until that coach came and changed the whole perspective of female coaching in general.
Well, I don't have any questions, but the story is really interesting. So I'm just enjoying the talk.
Okay, honey, thank you. All right, Aya, last one, and then we are going to say goodbye because I know you said that you have another, you have to go at, and I think we're a little over. So Aya, one more question.
Yeah, I just want to add for what Maria said, about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, there were young female in Egypt, female soccer players. They were 15, 16, and they were playing a game and they won. And the media was posting about them that they won. And I just got into the comments and were tons of comments that were saying, oh, now take your shirt off, you just scored a goal and go make me a sandwich and stuff. There are really very, very mean people who are sick, and I think this thing need to be illegal.
Yeah, well, I believe it's changing now. I'm seeing it's getting better and better every day. Before it was
young.
way, way, way worse. For now, it's getting way better than before. But we're still learning. I believe at some point we will get to have equal payments as well in sports in general.
And you have to remember, a lot of it is ignorance, and a lot of it is how people were raised, and so doing these types of things, having these conversations, not getting angry, but teaching them that there is something different out there, that the world is changing, and educating them in the sense that it's not, years ago anymore, is the best thing that you can do in response to something like that. So Dr. Jen, any final words for them, or anything that you want to say before you go?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I would say is that we have to look at the world and think of the world as we want it to be, not the way it's been, right? And if we all work towards that, right, being more understanding, being more compassionate, being more inclusive, being more fair, then we can all be a part of the solution. There are always going to be people who don't get it. But we can't give them too much of our energy, right? Of our heart space and head space. It doesn't mean when you see it, it doesn't hurt sometimes, right? Like I'm practiced at it. I've been, in the spotlight many times, which means you've been a target many times. And yet it doesn't mean you don't feel it, right? But the good thing is that when we surround ourselves with a really good tribe, we can remind each other, like, don't listen to them. They're not right. Or, hey, okay, maybe it was that way, but that's not the way it has to be in the future. And just continue to try and find great people who are doing great things and, to try and be better all together than we would be apart, right?